Welcome to Relationship Mastery, a podcast for those who want to learn how to master the art of creating happy, healthy, and loving relationships. Please join me, Adey-Jones, and my co-host, Barry Selby, each Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific for a lively and informative conversation on everything to do with relationships. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And hi, Barry. Another week together. This is getting to be quite a habit. A healthy
I think it
habit.
is, though. I think we're getting kind of practiced at this, so it's a good thing we're getting used to this now.
Yeah, I love it. I look forward to it so much. So today, last week, we talked about the inner child and how to take care of that inner child, to respect it and to nurture it and to not shame it. It's a part of us. It's basically, feelings and memories and behaviors that we integrated as a young child that still basically run the show if we're not paying attention. But
that's the key.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the key. It is the drive into everything. So we need to be taking care of it.
Yeah, and like we said last week, in a loving way, not in a shaming way. We'd never shame my children for how they felt when they were 4 or 5 years old. So we should never shame ourselves. It's just, as you say, it's the awareness and to reparent that inner child. But what we're going to talk about this week is self-esteem, because often many of us, well, I'll talk about myself, with low self-esteem and struggle with having to sort of battle that throughout our lives. And we sometimes develop really unhealthy habits of how to raise our self-esteem or what we think will raise our self-esteem. And it's actually a sort of never-ending search to fill ourselves up, to elevate ourselves from the outside in. So it's going to be a great deep dive into how, I used to say I was the poster child for low self-esteem until I hit 50. And I'd love to share with everybody what it was that helped me see myself so differently that I showed up in the world a very different person. So
it's going to be good. Well, a couple of things I want to add is, one is, for some people, they're not sure what self-esteem is. What correlates self-esteem to is worthiness.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And the thing with worthiness for me, I just want to put it on the table up front, is that we have been told, many of us over our lifetimes, that our worth isn't that high, for whatever reason. Either we were bullied or pushed around or debased by somebody's viewpoints who we, quote, respected. But worthiness, I've learned and preach and talk about too, is something that is innate. So when we talk about self-esteem, it's really a self-awareness or a self-reflection. So it's how we view ourselves. So when you're listening to what we're talking about in this episode, and make sure you understand as a listener that we're speaking about how do we actually view ourselves. Again, last week we talked about our inner child and how we looked at how we observed, how we respected, how we took care of it. In a way, self-esteem is kind of like, how do we look at ourselves now as an adult? And how do we, I want to say heal is the wrong word, but how do we reconcile with what we've been told when we're younger to who we are now?
Yeah. And also, very much what we interpreted, because maybe some of us weren't overtly told we were worthless or anything, but we just interpreted people's actions and behaviors meant, classic one is for me with my father that, never acknowledged me when I would pass him in the street. I've always said that I always thought to myself, well, if I had been pretty enough or clever enough or good enough, he would want to claim me as his child. And so I internalized somebody else's behavior and I made meaning of it, that it was something lacking in me. And it's only as I became an adult and was able to look back and go, oh my God, his behavior had nothing to do with me. It was, if anything, the lack was on his part, in that he was unable to love me for whatever reason, So, but it's so fascinating how we interpret as a young child. And I often say young children, they'd rather make themselves wrong than think that the people who are supposed to love and care for us are actually unable of doing so. Because if we make ourselves wrong, then at least there's a chance we can actually work hard and change ourselves and maybe change the situation by being clever or pretty or funny or whatever it is to make them love us. There's a chance there. But if we just say, oh no, it was they weren't able to, then it's a little final and it's painful.
Well, this is the thing that as children, it's almost taboo. We can't look at our parents and think there's anything wrong with them because they're the ones that raised us. And so the wiring and the training and the way society sees it is that, parents know best.
Yeah.
So what they say, how they act, how they treat us has to be right. So that we then look at that and say, well, that's the way they're treating us. Then what is at fault, in quotes, is inside of us.
Yeah.
Therefore, we are, failed, all those things we label ourselves with, which are inaccurate. But it's true what you said, that when we actually do get to the point, if we can, as a younger person, to recognize that we're okay and it's their misperception that's going on, not our reality. And that's the thing, it's about their perception, not our reality, that's key. But to really have that finality, to notice that and to really own that, it's not easy for someone who's younger.
Yeah,
because we have that pedestal thing. We put our parents on pedestals, unfortunately, even when they don't treat us well. So, yeah, no, it's a challenge. I understand.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating is that sometimes we make that perception as a child, and then we don't question it. It's just I certainly lived the first many years as an adult with that belief I am not good enough. My self-esteem was completely in the toilet, and I was always trying to, and this is what I also want to focus on today, is I was always trying to raise my self-esteem. And I did that in a way that I call the outside in. It was, it was by how I looked to the outer world, what I achieved, who I was with, all of those things. I was looking for validation. I was looking to feel better about myself. And, as we know, it's that sort of bottomless pit. It doesn't matter how many certifications you get, how many compliments you get, whatever it is, it tastes so good for a second. And then all of a sudden, like a day or so later, you're like, where did that feeling go? Why isn't it still there? Why isn't this pit getting filled by all of this outside, as I say, validation or exactly, all the things we've achieved, achievements and things like that. But that's, what I eventually came to see was that I was just looking in the wrong direction. I was looking from the outside in as opposed from the inside out. And it was really coming across the spiritual understanding. I mean, like I've shared before, I was on a spiritual understanding since I was in my 20s, but it was coming across the principles in 2009 that really, really affected how I saw myself. It was so simple. And then when I realized that, we are all equal, we all come from the same spiritual energy, nobody's more than or less than or whatever it is, on a spiritual level, I stopped comparing myself. And naturally that self-esteem that's within all of us, you mentioned it earlier, just began to rise to the surface. It was magical. You had to do nothing. In fact, it was slowing down and stopping doing and doing and doing. And I was able to feel what was already there in the beginning.
Yeah, for me, I was reflecting back from my own pre-teens and teen years, because when I was in school, in junior school in England, which I don't think is I don't know what school it is over here, probably junior high, maybe, I'm not sure. But anyway, so when I went to the first year of junior school, I was in the second level, because back in England we had levels of classes, like there were 4 classes in the year, and there was the top one and the bottom one and 2 in between. And in the first year, I was in the second group underneath the first one. But in the first year, I was one of the top 3 students in that class. So we moved up to the first level class the next year. And the thing for me is that I celebrated the end of that year of like, I was in the top 3. It was amazing, awesome. Next year, I'm in the middle, in the second year in the first level class, but I'm only somewhere in the middle of it somewhere.
Yes.
And the self-esteem, that holding my self-esteem, it came crashing down because I suddenly went from being top of the class to being the middle of the class, even though the class was higher than my previous class was, And so that self-reflection and awareness shift of just, king of the hill to bottom of the heap type thing became kind of it followed me through the rest of my high school. Because I recognized now I had, or junior school rather, I recognized that I didn't, looking back, have the understanding that where I was in the group wasn't relevant to my value. It was just a rating scale.
Yeah.
And I remember coming home with report cards and seeing seeing a look on my dad's face when I showed him report cards when it wasn't all A's.
Mm-hmm.
And so for many of us, boys and girls and men and women, we have had our own stories, whether it's how good you look or how smart you are or how fit you are physically or, that sort of thing, where if we're not the best of the best in that category, and we get feedback from our parents especially that really it reinforces it, our self-perception gets crushed and we start to feel less than. And so finding ways, like you found with the three principles, to understand that that was not who we really are, but it wasn't how we took it on as a belief system that has been maybe in there forever for some of us, that we have to learn to disengage that and recognize that who we are is, yes, divine like everybody else is, that we are all one and the same. There is no difference. But that gap from the feelings of low self-esteem to understanding who we really are, we've both been through that journey. But for our audience, how do we explain to them in a way that they can grasp hold of something? Because I'm realizing that we know so well, but we've condensed a number of years into a very short moment to express this.
You know how I teach it when I teach it to people. I use sort of like, I always say sort of we are 99% spiritual and 1% human. Of course, that 1% is going to show up differently. Some of us are sort of, taller, shorter, fatter, thinner, blue-eyed, brown-eyed, different color skin, different, emotional IQ and intellectual IQ. And we all have these differences, but it's 1% of us. It's just our little human suit that we arrive on this earth in. And when we focus on that, of course, we're going to be comparing. We're going to be seeing ourselves as better than or less than when we live in that 1% world. But when we really do understand, and I know it's, and that's why I say the 99 versus the 1, because it's easier for people to visualize. When I say 99% of us, that's a massive percentage of who we really are, comes from the same spiritual energy that makes all of us, all living things, and certainly all humans. And there is nobody that's a little more spiritual or a little less. Nope, we are all identical on that level. When I keep, pointing that out to people and pointing that out, it does begin to settle in. And what happens is, when we're the spiritual part of us, we're in that beautiful, peaceful, loving place, no stress, no worry, no comparison, all that gorgeous sort of place. We're not doing all the comparing. The comparing and less than, better than is only happening in the personal mind within that 1%. So to me, it's not something we should be upset about, or it's just the awareness of it. It's like, I'm in my personal mind, thinking that all I am is this wonderful human suit that I've arrived in. But, so we don't, judge it. We don't do anything. We've just noticed where we are, where we're putting our attention, where we're focusing. Because as I said, when we're in that space and we are constantly trying to elevate ourselves from that space, that personal mind, it's really hard. Because as I said, everything we achieve, the feeling lasts for a little while and then it disappears, and we're on that constant, what next? What next? I want that feeling again. I want that feeling again. And when we're in that place of always wanting and wanting and wanting, there's like that monkey mind of dissatisfaction. But when we, but wait a minute, 99% of us is perfect as we are. That's when we come from that place of peace, gentleness. We're not comparing ourselves, and just feels so good. As I said, we naturally feel our self-worth when we're in that space. But all we do all day long is drift from one to the other and one to the other. And it, for me, it's not about never, ever being in my personal mind, because I couldn't be. I'm human. I'm going to be there. But it's the awareness of where I am and where I want to get back to. And it's not a journey it's not hard to get back there. It's just as simply, as I said, oh God, that's 99% of who I am. And so that's what happens for me. And it has brought such confidence that I never had. Confidence, self-esteem, value, self-love, all those things came from that awareness, not from my achievements. So I hope that helps people that may be listening. That's what I teach from. And it's amazing how many people go, oh, And we got, as I said, we go backwards and forwards. We've got all the time in the world to be spiritual when we're dead. So while we're here on this earth, let's embrace our humanity. It's not anything to escape from. It's just to be aware of, how much of it it really is. It's only 1% of it.
I agree and applaud with what you're saying. And having been on a spiritual journey for many years myself, I totally understand that too and agree with you. I want to add more peace for more nuts and bolts for people who maybe not have gotten to that point yet in their lives to understand who they really are as true spiritual beings, which we both know we are. And not to sound superior, just saying that's the awareness. But you mentioned earlier about the way you feel with a sense of being approved of and being accepted and being honored and that sort of thing. The one thing I remember learning many years ago in one of the seminars I took was understanding how approval works, because one of the challenges we face is we tend to be referenced by other people's valuing of us. And this is the thing about self-esteem. It's not outside esteem, it's self-esteem. Mm-hmm. But we've been trained, again, the way society works, is that we tend to thrive or crash based on what other people think of us. So oftentimes, one of the ways we correct that is we start to recognize what other people think of us is really not, well, to quote Eleanor Roosevelt, what people think of us is none of our business, but reality is what people think of us is their perception, not who we are.
Exactly.
And so when we learn how to disengage, disconnect what people say about us, talk about us, think about us, say to our faces even, we look at them and go, oh, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. That is their perception. That's not who we are. And with the approval process, the approval thing I learned is that we, oftentimes when we're very young, we tend to thrive or crash, for the words, but your words, based upon other people filling us up by approving of us and loving us and being nice to us and being kind to us. So it's kind of like we carry around this cup, wants to be filled up by that from other people. Yeah. And that challenge with that is it's temporary. Kind of like Chinese food. You have Chinese food, you get hungry 2 hours later. It's that same idea where somebody loves you, it's like, great, but then you go back for more. I mean, I think puppies do the same thing. They come to us and like, you love me, great. And then 2 minutes later, they come back, do you love me again? Great. It's that sort of thing. So recognizing that when that happens,
self-esteem.
Well, they just they want to come and love, reminding us that we're loved is what it is.
Exactly.
But anyway, so the point I was going to try to make is the understanding about how that approval system works. The idea of having a cup that gets filled up by other people is what we forget is we can fill up the cup ourselves, and what we don't often do is turn that perception around. It means that we instead of being looking for other people to go, you're great, you're awesome, you did a good job, you're handsome, you're pretty, all those things, tell ourselves that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so simplistic, I know. And we talked about it last week with raising our inner child. We should be raising ourselves 24/7 all our lives, meaning that we take care of ourselves. I don't just mean physically, like with the food we eat and exercising, but how we talk to ourselves, because most of us could use some course correction of our self-talk. Mm-hmm. And so having the ability to be kind to ourselves, to be nurturing, to praise ourselves. And because I know some people believe that when you're doing that, you're being selfish and egotistical. It's like, no, I don't mean that. It's about respecting the vehicle, the inner being of what we're about on this planet. And so I personally, for my clients, a lot of times I give them affirmations, things like that. But really it's come down to is what do we say to ourselves that's additive versus what do we say to ourselves that's subtractive? If we change the languaging to more positive, more additive, our self-esteem tends to rise automatically. So hand in hand, what you said, what I said, I think that goes together. Well, exactly. As a good blend.
Because I think what you're pointing to is still from the 1% in the sense. It's still sort of it's having a conversation with yourself as a human being. It's elevating yourself as a human being. Mine is almost like a default. Mine is just like, hey, this is how the system works. We are equal to everybody else. You don't even have to sort of list off, I'm great at this and I'm good at that. And I'm going to tell myself in the morning in the mirror that I'm beautiful and I'm this. It's because it's so innate within us that we are equal that we don't even, but it's great. I'm not saying don't do affirmations, but understand at the essence of it, there is nothing wrong with us. There's nothing wrong with us. We are amazing beings, all of us. Even I wanted to mention, I did have a situation yesterday and I watched my own self go up and down and I was loving what you're talking about, that sort of, I remember that phrase, I think actors say it's like, never read the reviews, the good ones or the bad ones, because the good ones are going to take you up, the bad ones are going to take you down. So don't read any review. And as coaches, we can sometimes have the same experience. And yesterday I had somebody reach out to me saying, you're the only one that understands, and blah blah blah, and wanted a call or a conversation. And
Mm-hmm.
I basically said, this is, here's my calendar leave. You can book a session. And clearly, she didn't want to book a session. She wanted to have another free call, and there was a boundary there. And it was so interesting to see that from being you're the only one that understands to being attacked because I didn't offer the free call, an additional free call. It was really interesting. So within the space of a few minutes, I went from being up here to being taken down here. If I'd allowed myself to have gone either of those places. Now, did I
Right.
feel like, whoa, gosh, that was a quick turnaround? That was almost borderline behavior. Like, I'm putting you up here. I didn't get what I want. I'm going to drag you down here. But it was interesting to see the sort of the emotional thing inside me go, whoa. But I was, and I'm very sensitive to people's energy. So I didn't like the change in energy, but I was very easy for me to step back and go, wow, that had nothing to do with me whatsoever.
Right.
So my self-esteem stayed very steady. It didn't get elevated with praise, and it didn't get taken down with criticism. It stayed
Mm-hmm.
steady. Again, as I said, I'm sensitive to people's energy. So when people have negative energy, I'm a little like, oops, don't want that near me. But again, if I hadn't had the understanding that I have, I would have been on the end of that rope, or the end of that sort of the elevator going all the way up, oops, all the way down. And
Yeah.
that is what self-esteem is. When you are able to be in relationship with other people, in interaction with other people, that your integrity, your knowing of who you are, your authentic self, knowing that you are coming from that place of integrity. And again, I work with people that are codependent and have a narcissist coming after them all the time, and a narcissist knows how to love bomb. And I had a low self-esteem, of course I was going to be seduced into that, being put on the pedestal. Oh, you're the best thing I've ever seen. Oh my God, I've been looking for you all my life. I was such a sucker for that because my esteem was so low that hearing those words elevated me. But then when they tore me down, I was so desperate for the nice words again. I stayed in those relationships to get the love bombing again, which always comes. You're always on the back and forth and back and forth. It's never all bad, otherwise you would leave. So you're hanging in there for that praise again. But when you have true self-esteem, all these antics that go on around you with unhealthy people of praising you and then devaluing you has no effect on you because you
Right.
know who you are. You know your self-worth. So
Mm-hmm.
it's freedom. It's incredible.
Absolutely. The thing is that how to say this? The majority of people on the planet have no clue about this, of course. We understand that. That's the thing about doing this work, is that it is a very personal experience, and we don't sort of tell the whole world about it generally.
I,
And say again?
I said I do.
Well, maybe that the whole planet doesn't know about what we do, unfortunately. Maybe it would be helpful. However, I'd like to think that the more we talk about this on the podcast and other places too, people start to get a clue that they can also claim and understand this for themselves as well. Because it is so true. And yes, this human experience for us, and some people get it, some people don't, is a temporary journey that we're choosing to be in for a period of time, which could be 5 years, 10 years, 100 years. Recognizing that it is temporary, transitory, and that what happens here stays here. It's not the infinity of what life is about. We become less attached to what happens here also. So our ability to play and dance in this environment, this world, this human experience is a lot more freeing because we're not constrained to, we're going to do things perfectly a certain way or a certain round. We can actually be lighthearted in the journey.
Yeah.
And part of this work really is to lighten up in a sense, because that's been the thing we've been pulled into. We've had this unfortunate, one quote I heard years ago, which I love. Life is too important to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that we have taken life so seriously because it has been imprinted on us in a way. You've got to make it count. You've got to do the right work. You've got to achieve a certain goal. And if we miss those marks anywhere along the way, we sometimes just beat ourselves up because we think we should have done better or done it perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was on a live stream yesterday with a couple of really cool people, and one of the guys said, it's like when it's really foggy, you can't see the destinations. You just take the next step, because when you take the next step, you'll see where the next one is, because the fog sort of moves back a bit each time. It's relatively speaking, you see the next step.
Yeah.
So to say you're going to go for these big goals, well, it's so far out you won't know if you'll get there or not. And you might decide when you're halfway there, because you look around and go, hang on a second, I need to go somewhere else. Sometimes we're so caught up in the dream or the agreement where to reach a certain goal, we're not allowed to change our minds. And changing our minds, choosing differently, is part of this journey of dancing through life in a way that is positive. So lighten up and have a higher level of joy in your life in where you treat yourself. That's a good way of doing it as well.
Well, I think that's the next show, Barry. So we're going to talk about being in the present moment and and everything. But to wrap up today's subject, which is the self-esteem, it's to tie the two things in, actually, because as I said, I had such low self-esteem for the first part of my life. I didn't play. I was too serious. I was so afraid of making mistakes or making a fool of myself that I would think even less of myself. So I was just in self-preservation mode. So I have like a bucket list of not only what I want to do in this lifetime, because I've wasted half of it worrying too much and playing too small, but I have a bucket list of what I'm going to do when I come back next time, because there's so many things that I want to play at. So I'm not one of those people that I'm determined that I don't want to be so evolved that I don't come back, because there's too many fun things I want to come back and do.
So my question is, where are you going to put that list so that when you come back, you'll find it again? That's the thing I'm not sure.
It's in the essence of who I am. It's going to be like, when I go back next time, I'm going to be a singer. Okay. I'm going to be a saxophone player. I'm going to be, I've got all these things I'd love to do and be. So too much to do in this lifetime. But I think it's a really, really important thing you were talking about at the end there about, and I definitely mean it, we should do this next week. It's about being in the present moment. It's not about having goals so far out there that you don't even see what's right in front of you. And I have a wonderful story that I will share next week I call it about noticing the golden threads that are right in front of you and saying yes to those, as opposed to, I see you on the ground there, but I've got a goal over there that I've got to get to. And it's about being in the present moment, noticing what's on offer right now, right in front of you, and exploring that, rather than having an agenda and a goal that takes you into the future and not the present moment. So I think that's a wonderful subject for next week. So
nice tease for next week.
Yes. Barry's.
I do what I can. I do what I can.
Yeah, really. All right. Well, I think we can end the show for today.
I think we'll end it there, yes, because we'll have saved some for next week's exciting episode.
Exactly. But just again to just recap that self-esteem comes from within, not from the outside in. Yes. So just reflect on that. And whether it's knowing who you are at your essence, as I say, that 99% spiritual, or whether it's building up your self-esteem by, as Barry suggests, affirmations and how you talk to yourself. Either way, it's an inside job and it's not from the outside in. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much. It was lovely chatting again with you, Barry, and I will see you next week.
See you next week. Take care of yourselves.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.
We trust you enjoyed this episode and invite you to share this with your friends and loved ones. In fact, please subscribe to our Relationship Mastery podcast. That way you'll get each new episode fresh and shiny as soon as it is released. We'd love to hear from you as well. So go ahead and enter your questions and comments at relationshipmastery.show. Take good care. We will connect with you in our next episode of Relationship Mastery.